Hey people, welcome back to the channel. This is a story in which Madara is Naruto's grandfather. He implanted his and Hashirama's cells into Naruto and trained him, which made him extremely strong. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment if you want to suggest fanfic. Check the description for credits and support the creator of the story. So let us begin. Chapter 37. Emotions December 27th. When life has a purpose, you have a reason to live. You have a reason to hold on to life no matter what fate throws into your path. There are many people who've strived for their goals, dreams, but when fate wishes it, she could turn your world upside down and make you question your own existence in this wretched world. What Samui did understand was that everyone had a role to play. It didn't matter who wrote the scripts, but discovering our roles and taking them up was something important. When you knew your role, you begin to understand yourself better. However, Samui wasn't the one who liked acting up on a script written by someone else. She liked to believe that her life was her own choice and her destiny would be her own choice. This life was full of many scenes to stage your own play, and there was always an audience to watch, and they will either be happy with you or jeer at you. This was one stage that she'd chosen to take, a stage she'd chosen to make her own existence useful. Though not many would know of her own role in this world, she was content with it. As long as she knew it in her heart that she had played her role, she had run her race, there was nothing else that would fulfill her heart more. This stage she'd chosen wasn't a small one. It was big and carried much more weight. It required more of her physical strength and mental strength. But that was not a problem to her. She had made her choice, and that choice is the one that brought her about to this place. Samui slowly walked into the dark hall within the palace of Naruto. Even though darkness reigned within the walls of the palace, Samui knew where to put her foot on. This ground, this floor, she knew it. Even if she was blindsided, she would still walk towards the predetermined destination. Samui reached her destination, and sat down on the feet of the empty throne. No second later, Naruto appeared on his holly throne, sitting comfortably, back comfortable pressed against the throne. His lone visible Sharingan glowing crimson as he stared down at the blonde woman before him. You are recovering well. I'd thought that it would take much more time for you to recover, Samui spoke, not directly looking at Naruto. Her eyes lingered about the darkness that reigned supreme around her. She'd become used to it now that it no longer bothered her. Sometimes she always liked to look around because she felt that there were things lingering around in the darkness. It was mysterious, and beyond anything she could define. She was certain that there were small creatures, flying about the hall whenever Naruto turned off the lights. My body isn't something that you can understand, Samui. I've some difficulties reading into it. It is a deep hole that is full of mysterious things that are peculiar and interesting, and yet I find no need to unravel all the mysteries, Naruto responded, his tone soft, something that had never been felt on his tone before. If you hadn't killed Orochimaru, he no doubt would be more than willing to study it for you, Samui responded, a small smile flickering through her face. Though she had never met the dead Sannin, she had been told enough that he liked experimenting and would no doubt love studying a body that is like Naruto's, especially when it holds so many secrets. Are you attempting to humor me? Naruto asked. The calmness of his tone wasn't anything new to Samui. Maybe, the blonde-haired woman didn't deny it. It must be boring for you being stuck here. I would have lost it already if I was stuck in such a place. It is indeed a little boring, but it is no bother at all. While I recover, I've been keeping my body asleep in the chamber. But there is no longer a need for that. Though I've yet to fully recover, the progress is acceptable, so I've deemed sleep no longer a necessity, Naruto responded quietly. Still, you aren't going to show yourself to anyone at this stage. If word got out that you are weakened, those outside the Imperial Kingdom will no doubt grow bold. Samui, her eyes were now fixed at his hypnotic left eye. It would be a problem if his current situation got out. It wasn't that she feared for Naruto, no, she feared for those who would dare attack him. He may be weak, but he was still Uchiha Naruto. I can still protect the country below us. However, given my current state, no mercy would be shown to any who would dare attempt something of that nature, Naruto said, all softness in his tone all but gone. His eye gained a dangerous glint as he spoke. This is what Samui feared, and she prayed that it never came to that. I've no doubt you can protect your country. However, the safety of Kumogakure will be at risk. If I chooses to fight you, I can't protect it from you, and neither can the Raikage or Killer Bee. Your loyalty to your village never ceases to amaze me, Naruto said, his left eye gaining a glint that Samui could not define. What is it that you wish to see me for? I summoned you because you called. Maybe I just came to cheer you up or offer you some company, and being here is kind of cool, Samui responded, looking away from Naruto. That is not why you are here, but it matters not. What should I do about Yugao? Why did you decide to leave her at Konoha? Samui responded with a question of her own. I left her there because I knew she would become a problem to my plans. She is way too nice and loyal to Konoha. She won't be able to stand and watch when I have my way with the village. There may be some casualties and she wouldn't want that. Her choice would be to try to stop me, Naruto explained quietly. Then you made the right choice, Samui said, looking back at Naruto to study him. Would you kill her if she stood in your way? If you do proceed with this redemption, she may hate you for it. It wouldn't be a problem if she hates me. I've been hated enough by humans to care if a single human hates me, regardless of who that human is, Naruto responded firmly. Samui shook her head. You did best, she said, and decided to lighten the mood. Besides, you weren't gone to anything with her. You would have just kept her at the Crystal Palace while you pulled the strings from up here. Do anything with her, what is that supposed to mean? Naruto asked with a ghostly raised brow. Well, when you are focused on your goals, you don't look at anything else. You refuse to deal with emotions in favor of your objectives. Besides, I've been here next to you for some time. You've seen me vulnerable, miserable, and you've yet to take advantage of me. I get the feeling the same would be for Yugao, Samui responded smoothly. She watched Naruto take on her words with a sharp look. She was curious how he would respond to it. Although she was able to invade his personal space without any resistance, she'd never insinuated anything like this. She knew he wasn't the one to overreact over something like this though. Would you have preferred it if I'd taken advantage of you and do as I please with your body? Naruto changed posture, bending a little to the left, and bringing out his left hand for his head to rest. He still fixed his gaze to the woman next to his feet. Probably. I wouldn't have complained if you did. I mean, it wouldn't have been anything I've yet to dream about, Samui responded so casually, looking straight at Naruto. I didn't think that you held such emotions. Naruto said in the same casual tone Samui had used. What emotions? Samui gave Naruto a blank expression as though she didn't know what he was talking about. Naruto merely smiled at her. Nothing, he answered with a wave of his right hand. Speak your mind. What do you want with Yugito? It has been bothering her since he'd not told her anything about the matter and Yugito wasn't saying anything concrete. She could only guess that Naruto was only laying the foundations. You already have me, why do you need another blonde? I want nothing from her, Naruto responded calmly. She just seemed to be a sad little thing. A part of me wants to help her, perhaps it is because she is your friend. Would another reason be that you want someone who I could talk to with issues regarding my relations with you so that I don't always come here to bother you when you want to be alone? Samui asked, staring deep into Naruto's eyes. Would it be a surprise if I said that I'm only helping her out because my heart tells me to do? Since when do you listen to your heart? Samui asked, but didn't give Naruto the chance to respond as she continued. Well, I guess it will be nice to have someone to talk about all these. Are you that worried about her that you'd come all the way here just to see what I wanted with her? Samui nodded slightly. I didn't want you involving her in your schemes that you proved to be damaging to her future. I care for her as my sister and wouldn't want anything bad to happen to her. It would hurt me even more if something were to happen to her because of you. Your love for her surprises me, Naruto said, holding out his right hand. The lights around them went on and in a puff of smoke a blade appeared within his right hand. The sword was light blue and its hilt was dark blue with black markings around it. Two small black chains were also attached to the hilt. Naruto handed the blade to Samui. Is it Yugito's? Naruto nodded. I thought you weren't capable of making it given the loss of your left eye. I used most of Matadabi's power to create it. The Biju was willing to give Yugito a farewell gift when I told it how miserable she was without her partner. The blade will give Yugito the ability to manipulate blue flames. Naruto explained calmly. Anything else? It is sentimental. I was able to imprint a part of Matadabi's conscious within the blade. It can only be used by Yugito herself or anyone she trusts. Samui nodded. Anything for me. I gave you a blade that makes Yugito's blade useless, what more do you want? Naruto asked, looking at the blonde inventively. You didn't explain to me what it can do, and I haven't had much time to use it. I'd thought that the only special thing about it was that it could cut through anything, Samui responded, looking at the blue blade she held on her right hand. Naruto shook his head. I gave you a weapon that is most powerful than any other weapon. The sword I gave is not just any blade, it is my blade. I designed it especially for me. Other than being able to cut through anything, it makes all forms of ninjutsu useless, and enhances your manipulation over your basic elements. Surprised, Samui asked. Why hasn't it been able to do that and why didn't you tell me this before? Naruto shrugged. I figured you'd figure it soon enough. However, the fact that you can't use its full capabilities means that you never will. I'd thought you'd be able to pull it off, but it appears I'll have to take it back. And what am I going to be left with? Nothing, Naruto said. Until you can tell me what it that you truly desire, you will depend on your own abilities, they should be enough. You can't give me something and take it back. Let me be with it, it is useful as it is. It just isn't flashy as Yugito's will be. Samui said, hoping Naruto would agree. Thankfully he agreed. Is the anything you want me to do? Go home. My messenger will come to you and give you a file of targets. He will explain everything in detail. You can take Yugito on this one. Naruto said, placing his hand on top of her head. Samui looked at him curiously on the contact but didn't say anything about it. Naruto merely smiled and Samui disappeared from his sight. A few minutes later, Kumogakure Samui sighed when she found Yugito lying on her bed, head facing the ceiling. She should have figured that since Yugito seems to have lost interest of many things, she would be around her home. Where have you been? I have been looking everywhere for you. Yugito eyes bored straight into Samui's, searching for the answer she sought. The Emperor. Later that day, Imperial Palace. It was for the first time that Conan had been up here within this palace. Outside, around this building was really glorious, nature seemed to come to life in all its glory. The greens that surrounded the palace, the water that flowed west side of the palace had been so inviting to her body. She wanted more than to rush there, roll about the greens and jump into the water and just be overwhelmed with bliss. However, she was here for more important things than that. She'd been at the capital for a day now and Naruto hadn't called her yet. His messenger had only said that he was preparing for her visit. She didn't know what the man was preparing, she couldn't stay away from her village for too long. The messenger, however, said it was fine as there was nothing to worry about. She could only guess that there was someone who was looking at the village while she was here. The entrance of the palace led you straight to the hall, which was the center of the huge building. The hall was rather large than anything she'd ever seen before, for a simple hall that is. On the floor, there was a dark crimson mat that covered the left side of the hall, and another that was dark blue that covered the right side. From the entrance straight to the throne, there was another layer of black mat, which was used for stepping in while you walked towards the throne and connecting the two sides. The throne itself was at a slightly higher ground than the floor she was walking on, and behind it, there were two large golden pillars that connected with the roofing. Between these pillars, there was a white veil that was plastered on the wall, and it had images of a total of 8 Mangekyo Sharingans. On the right of this veil, there was another small one that had the Uchiha symbol and the left had the Uzumaki swirl. Their pillars were also at each corner, and two beside the door frames. Above the ceiling were some exquisite lights that glittered like diamonds, their light shone around the hall making it look like it was clear day. The wall on her right had a rather large symbol of the Uchiha clan that was surrounded by two pillars. The left wall as well had the Uzumaki swirl. Conan took several steps further, and saw Naruto was sitting on his throne, watching her every step. His left eye watched her like this eye of a god, making her feel smaller. Yet she continued without even so much as twitching or breaking eye contact with him. She could indeed feel the oppressing air around the place and it seems to get heavier as she closed onto the emperor. She'd never done it before, but Conan found herself kneeling before the emperor. The action seemed to amuse him, making her feel stupid, and she got up. I was beginning to think that you were no longer going to call me. You seemed to have been busy talking with Gurren, and I needed to make preparations once the corpse was brought to me, Naruto responded, simply looking into the eyes of the woman before him. We had some discussions to go through, Conan said. A thought went through her head and she voiced it out. Do you know everything that happens down there? I know most things. However, I do stay away from personal matters. Everyone deserves some privacy and secrets, after all, Naruto said calmly. There wasn't everything that he had to concern himself with. He only bothered himself with things that were worth it and of relevance to him. Conan nodded. Although she wouldn't normally ask, she found herself questioning something. You've been spending your time here. From what Gurren tells me, she hasn't seen you down there for a few days now. Do you just prefer to watch things? There is nothing for me to do down there, and my current state doesn't really favor me running about down there. Naruto said calmly. You can say that I'm content with watching things, for now that is. Nagato didn't do things like this. He always put his hands down and grabbed a spade, digging in with the others. He wasn't socially awkward, they'd grown well with others during the old Akatsuki days. Although Nagato was very quiet, he was very social and talked well with others in those days. Naruto's wasn't like that. Although he could talk with others well, he didn't seem to enjoy other people's company. Why build a kingdom if you're not going to rule it? The imperial kingdom is yours, you're its emperor, yet you don't do the usual daily activities as an emperor. You allow Gurren to do everything, Conan said. If she was the one to build a kingdom as promising as this one, she wouldn't allow anyone to rule it for her. She preferred doing things herself to get it done. Trusting other people with something as big as her village wasn't something that she would do. Well, she was certain betraying Naruto would end in a quick death. Moreover, Naruto was careful in choosing people to work for and with him. For now, I've no interest in doing anything, directly. I'm satisfied with the work Gurren is doing. Well, my current state isn't suited for dealing with small things, Naruto explained. Oddly, he felt indulging this woman before him in whatever topic she brought up. The feeling was alien to him yet so familiar. So you'll eventually end up going down there to act as an emperor. Naruto shook his head slightly. That is unlikely. I don't know if it will be possible for me to leave this place once everything is completed. However, I would choose to spend a few years down there should it come to that. Conan couldn't really define if he meant he wouldn't be able to leave his palace in literal terms or just figuratively. She didn't put much thought to it though. While you watch things from up here, you keep your hands free, but no one will be able to trouble you while you preserve your own life. You can't have assassins up here. Naruto shifted to the right, still looking straight at Conan. It is impossible for something as an assassin to kill me, and I don't live here to preserve my life. Though the kingdom is not despicable before my sight, I prefer not to live amongst humans, for now. The leader of Omegakure noted that he wasn't putting himself in the same boat as a human. It was like he put himself above humans. She wasn't going to comment on it. Still, to think that assassins couldn't kill him was something else. Unless he was immortal, then he couldn't be killed. That was highly unlikely though. He was indeed powerful and there were no openings on him. Aside from that, anyone attempting to murder him was in for a quick death. Is this why you have chosen people down there to do your work? I chose people to do my work because I felt it was necessary for it to be so. There are a lot of mundane matters that aren't really not worth my time, Naruto stated. Why do you wish for Nagato to be brought back? Everybody deserves a second chance. Nagato never got his. He never got the chance to repent. For someone like him who was bent on doing that was good for the world, for someone who went through so much pain, I think he deserves another chance to live in this world, Conan stated with strong conviction. Is that all? Conan considered her words before speaking. You've shown no interest in bringing peace to this world. Even though you killed Nagato who wanted peace, Madara also wants the same. Both had their own ways. You stopped Nagato and are intent on stopping Madara. Should you succeed in stopping him, who will search for peace in this world? Naruto smiled at the woman before him. You want me to revive Nagato so that he can continue his dream, but on a different path. You want your dream to be finally fulfilled. The story of the Omegakure orphans continues. You've no problem with this, Conan stated. Not at all. Battles continue to bath precious earth with blood of vermin and despicable creatures taking the form of humans. Anything that must be done to end it is welcomed, even if it means turning the world upside down, Naruto stated, shifting again to his left. So, Nagato is indeed the child of prophecy, he seemed amused by the words that escape his lips. Child of prophecy. You know about that? Conan asked. That was something that she never talked about, neither did Nagato. It was something that Jiraiya had brought long ago. Do you believe in such things? No, Naruto responded quietly. I was merely saying it to amuse the toads who seem to like invading my privacy. Conan quirked a brow. What do you mean by that? She only knew that toads were Jiraiya's summons and possibly the ones who told him about the child of prophecy. She never gave it much thought, but to Jiraiya, it seemed to be important. The toads like to watch me. They can't do it without my permission, so, I allowed them to watch a little about this conversation. Why? It seems right that way. The elder toad knew already that Nagato is dead and that he was the leader of Akatsuki. He knew all along that you were not dead as Jiraiya believed, Naruto smiled, again. Don't you find it curious that they didn't tell him of all these? Conan nodded. Why didn't they do it? There are laws that must be followed, boundaries that must never be broken. Other beings prefer for humans to deal with their issues themselves without interfering. Guidance is however not forbidden as long as it doesn't step over the lines, Naruto stated. Before Conan could respond, another Naruto appeared before on her right. She could however see that he was not tangible. She didn't ask what because the Naruto then spoke to her. Let us revive Nagato, shall we? The intangible Naruto went through hand seals before holding both his hands together. Geto. Rine Tensai, he spoke quietly. The king of hell appeared from the floor and opened its mouth. It wasn't very long before a Nagato walked out of its mouth. He was still in the same condition he was when he fought Naruto. What Conan noticed was the lack of his Rinnegan. Nagato held both his hands without even surveying his surroundings. He was alive and he knew who could possibly do something like this. He'd thought his life had ended and he would join Yahiko and his parents in the land of the dead. But he wasn't given that chance. He had some good conversations while he was stuck between in the afterlife. He spoke much with Yahiko before he departed. The subject hadn't done anything to make him proud of his choices. He looked at the two people he sensed but before he could say anything, Naruto spoke. Conan, come to me. Despite wanting to go over to Nagato to inspect if he was fine, Conan moved closer to Naruto. She stopped just in front of his throne. The blonde leaned a bit closer to her. He placed his right hand on her gut. Before Conan could say anything, white substance began to spread all over her body. Her movements began to be restricted, veins bulged as she felt something like venom enter her system. She couldn't even scream. The substance covered her entire body quickly. Naruto blew her away from him into the path of Nagato who quickly caught her. What have you done? His voice was calm, but his eyes were narrowed at the blonde sharply. She will be alright, Naruto said waving his right hand in a dismissive manner. I merely gave her some of my power. A pair of eyes I have no use for to be precise. Why? Though surprised that he would go that far, Nagato was a little thankful for it. However, that didn't banish the questions that flew into his mind when the window was opened. To protect herself, she needed it. Naruto said before he decided to explain further. Conan is your pillar, she has a role to play in my country and in the shinobi world. Because of this, she needs all the power she can get. More importantly, if she dies before her role is fulfilled, I won't be able to revive her. Why wouldn't you? There are several people that I cannot revive and Conan is one of them. Naruto responded calmly. You don't have the Rinnegan because it was never yours to begin with. However, you will get it back soon enough. The Rinnegan is what gave you power to be God after all. Without it, you won't be God to your people. What is really going on? Nagato was now confused. This was an unfamiliar place to him and why would Naruto revive him when he was the one who killed him in the first place? Conan will explain everything to you once she wakes up, Naruto stated. We will talk further once she has told you what she knows. Naruto snapped his fingers and both Nagato and Conan disappeared from his view. Now then. Naruto stood up from his throne, two white cords were attached around his spine, I should rest. This had been enough for today. Konoha Ayame sighed as she slumped down at her bed. It had been another hard day at work. Still, she'd left her father at the ramen stand doing more work. They'd been busy recently with more customers coming into their way to buy their food. It was hectic, especially when it was just her and her father doing all the work. Hello, Ayame-san, a voice spoke, spooking it hell out of the woman. She quickly got up from her bed and turned to face the person. She'd not even heard her door open. I mean no harm, so there is nothing to fear, the man standing just away from her door stated. Ayame found no comfort in those words. Just by looking at him she could say that he was a shinobi. She knew that those people were dangerous and could lie through their teeth very easily. She'd been taught enough to know this. Who are you? She demanded, her eyes darting around the room to look for an escape route. Forgive my intrusion, the man said in a smooth tone, trying to calm her down. My name is irrelevant. I'm just a messenger for my majesty, the emperor of the Imperial Rice Kingdom. All the tensions in Ayame's body fled away when those words reached down her ears. Her mind understood them clearly and this only meant one thing only, Naruto. Why didn't you just say so in the beginning? I nearly thought something was going to happen to me, she released a sigh of relief. The relief was also painted across her entire face and body language. I wasn't positive that you would think of such. Nonetheless, forgive my intrusion, he said again and in a quiet tone. Ayame nodded, waving her right hand dismissively. It is all right. But did you have to come to my room? I didn't want to be noticed by anyone. Konoha's Anbu have been rather active in these past days. Getting in here hasn't been an easy thing to do. Once I was in here, I couldn't afford to be noticed, the man responded calmly. What do you want then? I was sent by His Majesty to fetch you. He said he wishes to keep the promise he made to you before he left. You said you wished to enjoy what his country has to offer and His Majesty had said he would take you there one day. Unfortunately, His Majesty can't leave the country at this time, he would have come here himself. The messenger explained calmly, keeping his eyes on Ayame. He noted that his emperor had many women that he, the emperor, was familiar with, and all these women were quite beautiful. He feared that one of these days. Ayame beamed at this. Wonderful, I was starting to think that he'd forgotten. She frowned when a thought came to her mind. I've been busy lately and I'm not sure I can leave father alone. Don't worry about that. Everything has been cleared. I've already spoken to your father. In fact, I talked to him a few days ago, and your temporary replacement is already waiting at hand to help him when you leave, the messenger responded. Ayame nodded with a smile. I must speak to him first though. I can't leave without saying goodbye. I didn't expect you to do so, the messenger said. You don't have to pack anything. Everything will be provided for you once you reach the capital. December 30th, capital of Rice. Gurren looked around at the newly created chambers of the Council of the Imperial Kingdom. The room was rather large, but still within the Crystal Palace. This section was one that was completed before the others. The room had a large table in the middle and chairs around it. Red was the theme in terms of color on the floor. All the walls were painted with dark blue. Facing the entrance on the other side of the room was Naruto's throne. The throne was placed on a high ground with stairs placed beneath it. Two pillars surrounded the throne, both painted in a crimson color. She'd not gone with anything fancy when she formed this place. Naruto had told her that she needed a council that would help her run this kingdom as he was not planning anything that he considered to be mundane. Well, since it had been made official that she wasn't going to work alone, the council was needed. She wouldn't have thought of building this place if it wasn't Naruto's idea. Gurren smiled warmly as she took her own seat around the table. Everyone had their own destined seat within the chamber, and they were placed in terms of positions one held. Naruto said he would select who would do what, and who would hold which position, he just didn't inform her when he would do so. There was about to be a meeting with everyone who was going to be involved within the kingdom. They wanted to begin with the future plans now as there was nothing that was stopping them from moving on forward. Last time she talked with both Mei and Gaara, Naruto was not present in the meeting, even though they were discussing their alliance. Despite the fact that he was not present, Gurren knew that he was very much aware of what was happening within the capital. His eyes and ears could see and hear almost everything. The large double doors of the chamber opened and the guests arrived, escorted by one of the security personnel in charge of guarding the palace. Konan entered the room with Nagato on her right. Both were still wearing their black cloaks with white clouds, almost the same as the Akatsuki cloaks. The only difference was the white clouds instead of the red. Behind them were Mei and Gaara, who seemed to be busy chatting about something. The last one to enter was a man named Shinji. He was wearing the special Anbu uniform, and his hair was spiky black and had small black eyes. He was also of a fair height and looked to be in his late 20s. The expression on his face was passive and he walked calmly with hands inside his pockets. Everyone took their seats and greetings were exchanged, but Mei was the first to speak. "Where is Naruto?" she asked with a small frown gracing her features. Really, she wanted to see him. Since the Cage Summit, she'd not seen him or either talked to him. He'd been keeping his distance and she was beginning to think that he was avoiding her. In his palace, Gurren responded quietly. She would have preferred it if Naruto was present in this meeting. However, he'd not talk her anything, even when she informed him of the coming meeting. "Is he going to come down here?" Mei questioned, looking straight at Gurren. Her frown never left her face when she asked. "I don't know. I hardly see him myself," Gurren responded in a quiet tone. If he tone revealed anything, it was that she was not the least pleased by the fact that she hardly sees Naruto. "We should complain about this. He is the emperor but doesn't act like one. He hides in his palace where no one get reach him while dumping all his responsibilities to you." Mei mumbled, a bit childishly as she did. Gaara could only shake his head. He too would have wished for Naruto to be here for this meeting. However, if it couldn't be helped, then they would have to get the job done. He wasn't told exactly what he was brought here for, but Gurren said that his presence was required. When coming here, Mei had told him that this was a meeting for the Council of the Imperial Kingdom. The conclusion he came with was that was to be presumably put in the Council of the Kingdom despite belonging to another country. "Shall we begin this meeting?" Nagato asked in a calm tone, his eyes looking around at everyone. He'd not come here for anything other than taking his responsibilities so that he could begin the path of peace. He'd failed trying to find it in another way, but this time, though the path wasn't yet clear, he wasn't going to fail. He had Konan, and powerful allies, other minds that worked towards peace. This time peace would be within his grasp, this time he would bring peace into this world. One way or the other, he was going to die smiling knowing that he'd fought the good fight. He'd yet to begin now. He was still even lacking his eyes and that wasn't dwelling well with him. However, Naruto had said he would be given his eyes, so he wasn't that worried about much. Still, the scenery was a bit different now that he was only viewing it with the eyes of a human. The eyes of Kami made him see the world differently than these normal eyes. "I second with Nagato-san, we should start with the meeting. If His Majesty wants to be part of this meeting, he will come. His seat is waiting for him after all," Shinji stated, voicing out his own thoughts about the matter. Mei sighed. She was going to have a good talk with Gurren after this meeting. She wasn't going to leave this country until Naruto comes down and speaks to her. She was his fiancé. He had to speak with her every now and then. She was also becoming lonely, she needed him. "I see no harm then," Mei finally said after leaving her thoughts. "Well, best she finished quickly and creates a situation that will force Naruto to come down running at her. Well, you are in charge, you should begin with things," she said looking at Gurren who held the Imperial Kingdom in her grasp. Gaara spoke before Gurren could respond. "May I ask something?" he said looking at Gurren. "Why am I invited to join a meeting of this kingdom's council? I would understand the Mizukage being invited since she is the emperor's fiancé." "I don't know," Gurren shrugged her right shoulder. "I was only told to call you two by His Majesty. He didn't explain himself and I didn't question him since I figured he had his own reasons." Naruto's smooth voice echoed through the walls of the chamber before Gaara could respond to Gurren. The blonde himself was sitting on his throne, chin rested on his left palm. He had noticed that this was a pose he liked doing these days. "I called you here because you are useful, Cage. Do you not like the privilege of being here, or are you perhaps not sure you should be here in the first place?" There was no underlying meaning behind his words, Gaara confirmed before he responded. "Not at all," he said quietly. "I am merely curious. I only became an ally of this kingdom recently and do not have the kind of relationship Kiri has with the Imperial Kingdom. It is fine, Naruto said, his head still leaned on his left side, being held by his left palm. A good relationship is formed by trust and good communication. You start get well on your first day. The first days you try to form a relationship with someone, you have to first create a proper channel of communication. Without proper communication, both parties can't understand each other and a relationship can never be formed. I do believe that you and I can understand each other to a satisfactory level. I also do believe that my language is not alien to you. I have shown you my trust by bringing you here, and besides I did tell you that you would be of some use to the world. However, if you do not wish to be part of this meeting, the doors will be opened for you to leave. There was still no threat coming from his tone and his left eye just glowed crimson. His tone was calm as relaxed his body language. I believe that we can work well together and thank you for the trust. Gaara could only say those words with Naruto's eye watching him carefully without even blinking. It was a bit unnerving how the blonde could stare at him for so long without even blinking. Excellent, Naruto said and his left eye darted around the room for a moment. I'm glad that you made it, Nagato, Kona. A small smile graced his lips as he looked at the two Omegakure leaders. Naruto then turned to Mei. You are free to make your complaints, Mei. The way Naruto was speaking was actually catching Nagato, Mei and Gaara by surprise. Gurren wasn't because she had noticed the slight change in his personality. For Nagato, this was a bit different from the emotionless Naruto he'd faced in a battle that saw his death. Well, he wasn't complaining about anything. So long as he got to march towards peace, he had no complaints. He seemed to have changed, Mei thought smiling a bit. You want me to complain freely? The Mizukage asked, eyes looking at the emperor inventively. Yes, you said you had complaints. If I'm not misunderstanding your words, you suggested that I was neglecting my responsibilities as the emperor while I hide in my comfort zone, Naruto said in a calm tone. Something that Mei noted about his expression and tone was that he was still staying neutral about the matter. He was neither mad nor amused by it. I will complain when we are alone. There are some things that I'd rather allow you to hear only. No, Naruto said, the tone was just smooth, lacking the usual firmness and sharpness. You made your intentions to complain in this room with all these people present, so I'm offering you the opportunity in this room with all these people present. That is about fair, don't you think? Gurren shook her head. What she did know was that Mei wanted to complain about personal matters, matters that needed her and Naruto only. Naruto was just telling her to openly discuss their relationship in front of other people. It was embarrassing and if it was her in Mei's position, she wouldn't do it. She would wait until he was alone to talk to him. Mei sighed. I wanted to complain the news that you do nothing. It seems to me like you are not doing anything. However, since you've appeared, I can't complain to anyone since you are doing what is to be expected of you. I see, Naruto seemed to say at her response. By all means, he seemed a little disappointed. Conan, are you adjusting well to the new view of things? The message was a bit cryptic, but Naruto hadn't put it in that way so that the others didn't find out about it. I have adjusted well. But using them efficiently is something proving to be a bit troublesome. Conan responded quietly. I imagined it wouldn't be easy. Naruto went through some thoughts before speaking again. After this meeting, you'll have to stay behind for a day or two. I will put everything that is needed inside your head. A small version of Tsukuyomi would be needed. At the moment, his real body was synchronized with the Gedo Mazo so that he can recover well. The synchronization with the statue means that he couldn't leave the palace. However, in a day or two, he would stop using the statue to support himself. Synchronizing with the statue also gives him enough power to put Conan under the eternal Tsukuyomi. Within the Genjutsu, he could manipulate everything freely. He would teach Conan everything there is to know about the Byakugan. With the Gedo Mazo supplying him with power, even if they only spend 2 days within the Genjutsu, with real time, within the Genjutsu itself, much more time would have passed. Conan looked at Nagato for confirmation before nodding. Naruto sensed something when Conan gave her response. He looked at Mei with a barely hidden amused expression gracing his face. Does it bother you that I will be spending my time with another woman, while you, my fiancé, are neglected? Although Mei could tell that he found this amusing, she couldn't help but give a stiff nod. Any woman would be bothered by it if it was happening to them. Naruto looked between Gurren and Conan before asking. Would it bother you too? Both nodded. Naruto shook his head. Gurren, you've not been in a relationship before, your opinion carries no weight. Aside from Shinji and Mei, the rest of you are still virgins. No, a thought came into his head and he added. Perhaps Conan might not be. She was in a relationship with Yahiko before he died. Did you not sleep with Yahiko, Conan? The woman was blushing slightly, while the looks on the others were just priceless. Gurren felt like she was truly exposed. The audacity of this man to say something like that in front of other people. Mei just found it amusing, enough to burst out laughing. Shinji cleared his throat. Your Majesty, I don't think that is something appropriate to say. He said in a respectful tone. Emperor, Nagato started firmly. Perhaps we should begin with the meeting. He didn't find the current subject amusing at all. It was just way too uncomfortable for him, especially with Conan involved. I guess we should. Just like that, everything returned normal. Discussions about what we are going to do will be held as the days continue to add. I still needed to remove some things first. However, there is another project that has started that Nagato and Gaara will need to know. What project? Mei asked just to be sure that it was something that she was aware of. Naruto had a tendency of doing things by himself, and with the fact that she has not seen him in the past days, he could have started something without informing her. I'll get onto that, Naruto said. Gurren, your new title shall be Prime Minister of the Imperial Kingdom. I will retain my title as the Emperor, but you will still do all things as the Prime Minister. I trust that you will carry out your duties with as much effort as you've been. Conan, you will be the chair of the Imperial Council. This means that whenever there is a meeting, you will be in charge of it. You've watched Nagato long enough to be a leader in your own. Nagato, you are in charge of Omegakure. Conan did well while you were away, but you must retain your mantle as leader of Omegakure. Your other responsibility will be taking charge of all military forces in your village and within this country. There are generals who command my armies, you will supervise them. Shinji is one of the generals within the kingdom. He leads the special corps, who are in charge of protecting this capital, as well as doing other activities. Shinji, Gurren, and Nagato will head this kingdom's judicial committee. Now, who isn't here, will head the imperial court, which is part of the judicial system. The imperial court will be the one that judges according to the laws that the judicial committee will create. This group will also be responsible for management of the imperial prison. Cage, you are given a special seat within this council. As a leader of Sunagakure, your input will be highly valued by those around you. Mei, what do you wish to do? All eyes turn to the Mizukage. I want to be part of the judicial committee. Isn't this committee going to be the ones that will create laws that will govern this kingdom and its allies? I also have a feeling that the laws created by the committee will affect other villages and countries that aren't part of the kingdom. If so, then I want to be part of it. Acceptable, Naruto said. Shinji, you will inform Nagato of the purge once you have time. My messenger will send Mei and the Cage further details about the purge so it can also begin in their respective countries. Any questions before I dismiss you? What of Karen? Also, what are you doing to solidify our relationship with the Land of Snow? They are our biggest supplier of technological equipments. Most of the things that Karen has requested for the research facility in Uzu are coming from the Land of Snow. Gurren stated. Karen is a child. Let her play around in Uzu. Do as you like with the princess. His tone was a bit dismissive, making Gurren sigh. Don't complain when I plan a political marriage with you and the princess as well as the Kazekage's sister to strengthen our alliance with Suna. Gurren mumbled under her breath. She was hurt even though she didn't mean to say it loud. Say what? Mei turned sharply to face the woman. Nothing. Gurren gave a quick response. What of the bijoux then? Gaara asked. Nagato nodded. Conan tells me that you have all of them. Do you plan to use them like I wanted to? He asked. His plan was to use the bijoux power to teach the world pain. However, in the afterlife, he met Yahiko who changed his views again. The bijoux are irrelevant. Naruto used a dismissive tone again. By irrelevant do you mean that the bijoux will not be used for anything? Gaara asked quietly. Naruto had said that he wasn't going to use the bijoux for anything evil. However, he hadn't said whether he would use them or not. Still, within the shinobi world, the tailed beasts were everything. Yet, Naruto has all 9 of them and still says they are irrelevant. That is exactly what I mean. Cage. Tailed beasts will no longer be equalizers, and in due time I will ensure that their existence becomes a memory. Naruto responded calmly. This was a shock to everyone. What Naruto had spoken could only be interpreted as he was planning to rid of the Bijouis like killing them. That was just unthinkable. No one would think of something like that. There was a belief that a Bijou was said to be impossible to kill and that they possessed great power. So killing them was seen as a waste. Yet, Naruto was saying he would make their existence a memory. Are you saying that you plan to kill the Bijouis, Emperor? Nagato questioned. This was something that he wouldn't do. He respected the Bijouis for their power and wouldn't think twice of using them because of their great power. It would surely be a great loss if the Bijouis were to cease to exist. In a way, yes, Naruto gave his short response without explaining anything further to how he would go about that. Gaara merely shook his head. The other great villages were going to lose it once they hear of something about this. They would fight to death if it meant saving the Bijouis. Humans have so much become used to having Bijouis in their possession that it seemed like they couldn't define what power was without them. You can't be serious, Naruto. We have to think about this carefully. Their power can be used to strengthen this country, and we still have enemies that we must deal with. Gurren had turned her whole body facing Naruto by now and her tone had been raised. To her it was just unacceptable. With all 9 Bijouis they could ensure that none of the great villages who weren't allied with them attacked them. Watch your tone, Gurren. Have you forgotten whom you speak to? Although his posture and expression didn't change a bit, Naruto's tone was frighteningly sharp. No one dared to speak for that moment. He wasn't even trying, but his tone just cut through their thoughts like a sharp blade, and it also silenced any further questions they had. Hit with a heavy wake-up call that dropped on her shoulders like a ton of steel, Gurren shrunk back to her chair and sat down. A bow of apology followed suit. Forgive my insolence, Your Majesty. Naruto waved his right hand in a dismissive manner before speaking. The subject of Bijouis shall not be brought up again. Is this understood? Everyone nodded. Excellent. The sharpness in his tone became a memory, its hold over the council members loosened. Do you have any more questions? We have enemies in the form of the small villages that have been trying to get into the picture, Kumogakure, Iwagakure and Konoha. Shall we prepare for war with them? Konan queried, her eyes firmly at the relaxed emperor. Leave the great villages to me. I'll deal with them within time. Your forces are not to be shipped for war. Should there be one, I will end it myself, Naruto stated, in a firm tone. General Takada has been dealing with the insolence of the smaller villages. You are free to do as you like with them, but refrain from destroying their villages. Proper punishment has to be dealt so that they can understand. If you wish for me to beat them, I will do so. Konan shook her head. I was merely curious. It is not in me to decide what the punishment will be to the leaders of these villages. I assume since Nagato will be in charge of all our forces, he will be responsible for such. Naruto shook his head slightly. The Imperial Court will decide based on the laws and legislation the Judicial Committee has passed. Takada's division is the Imperial Police that are stationed around the elemental nations. They are responsible for hunting down those who break your laws and bring them to the Imperial Court to be judged. The Imperial Police as well as the Special Corps are not within Nagato's control, unless it is an emergency. You will understand this better once my messenger gives you the detailed file which will explain what your responsibilities truly are. This is why I'm giving you time to return to Omegakure and familiarize yourself with the work you will fill. The Imperial Prison, is it going to be used to jail any threats against the Empire only? Mei asked curiously. That is for you to decide. Isn't that you wish to be a lawmaker for this kingdom? Naruto responded quietly. This covers everything then. You are all dismissed. Cage, my messenger will return you home within the next minutes, the same will be for you Nagato. Konan will have to stay behind. What of me? Mei asked smiling sweetly. Isn't it that you wish to speak to me? If you no longer wish to do that, you will be taken back to Kiri while the day is still young. Naruto responded. He looked amused when Mei's expression nearly exploded in happiness at the thought of finally getting some alone time with him. Before anything could be said, Nagato spoke his last thought. What of peace, Emperor? Naruto smiled at the man. This time, he changed postures and leaned back to his throne, folding his hands across his chest. That is for you, Gurren, Mei, Konan and Gaara to decide. Between all of you, you can think something else. I combined you all knowing this. Nagato looked at the people Naruto had said for a moment before nodding. What are missing are my eyes then, he said. Naruto nodded. You will get them soon, he responded. Nagato nodded. I will wait until then. He stood up to leave. Konan followed him, sweet as she had to speak with him before he left. Naruto had made it clear that she was to stay behind. Is there something, Kage? Naruto asked, seeing that the young wind shadow had remained behind while others left. Only Mei had remained since she wished to speak with him. Gaara shook his head. A small smile graced his lips. Thank you, he simply said before walking away. He didn't explain what he was thanking Naruto for, but he was positive that Naruto would understand. With everyone gone, Mei's gaze settled on the emperor. Aren't you gone? Come down here. Is that a request or an order? An order from the future queen of the imperial kingdom, Mei said with a small smile on her face. You know, when we have kids, our children are going to be the ones to rule over this kingdom. Is that so? Naruto said. He didn't move from his throne, neither was his attention on Mei anymore. He snapped his fingers and an image of Samui appeared in front of him. I've been trying to get hold of you for some time now. Were you out cold? She asked in a cool tone. Busy, my real body is within the time dimension along with the Ghetto Mazo. I can only interact with just this body, and my attention cannot be everywhere, Naruto explained. What is it? I caught some trouble while doing my job, and I want you to bail me out, Samui said. Naruto merely gave her a blank look. I came across Kisame and he's been running after me for a few hours now. I need you to take me out of there before he finds me, I'm spent already. Weren't you with Yugito? No, Isama called her to do some training. She couldn't refuse, so I ended up going alone, Samui responded calmly. Naruto looked at Mei after the image of Samui disappeared. Give me a minute, he said before disappearing. A minute was all he took before he came back again, on his throne. He then walked down towards her and took a seat beside her. Who was that woman? Have you found another one? Mei asked, looking straight at Naruto with a straight look on her face. Certainly, she wouldn't be pleased if she found out that Naruto had found another woman. She was more than enough for him. Would it be a problem if I said I plan to marry 10 women and she will be the next after we get married? Naruto asked. An amused expression found its way into his face when he saw the look on Mei's face twisted. I would make use of my lava manipulation to burn many skins, and yes, it would be a problem, Mei gave response even though she knew Naruto wouldn't do something like that. She was just saying, just in case something was to happen. Do you think you can satisfy my appetite alone, Mei? Naruto asked, leaning against the chair, turning it to face the woman fully. Mei stood up from chair and sat on Naruto's lap, her left side pressed against his chest, face facing the other way. Since he'd grown in size, she could snuggle on him for comfort. I can. Mei said and got hold of Naruto's hand. Is that woman the one who told you to get me the ring you bought me? Naruto nodded with a small smile on his face. You still remember those words I said to you back then? Somehow it feels like I said it ages ago. A lot has passed during this time, Mei responded. There were many things that have played their part during the time gap. Regardless, she was still alive and Kiri doing far better than she'd expected. What happened to you? You seem to be very much lively, smile a lot, and your body is much warmer than before. Its warmth relaxes me, shutting down all tensions. Naruto was quiet for a few moments before he responded. I once made a vow in my heart. I vowed that I would be happy and enjoy my humanity, and be myself. However, so far I've been focused on fulfilling my dreams that I put that vow under my bed. During my time alone in my palace, I realized that there was something missing in me. I felt that I was a bit lonely. Perhaps this is why I do not mind spending time with Konan to teach her a few things. For my plan to reach the climax, and for me to be where I want to be, I can't live as a human. Originally, I'd planned to enjoy my humanity for a few years, and fulfill my vow. But now things have been escalating at a faster rate than I'd thought. This has forced me to adjust a few things. For now, I will settle to enjoy my humanity for a few years before taking over the heavens. Living up there alone kind of suffocates me, and brings this sudden desire for human contact and to have a few conversations. The feelings are alien, yet so much familiar, Naruto explained in a calm tone. There was so much that Naruto had said to her and it left her with a lot of questions that needed to be filled. Yet, Mei didn't focus on all that. She figured she would get the chance to ask him further about it someday. Why don't you just come down then? We could enjoy moments like these much often. I could be there for you and you'll never feel lonely again. Her tone was warm and just above a whisper. I can't do that, not now at least, Naruto responded, placing his right hand at Mei's right side. This is just a copy of my healthy body. My real body cannot leave the palace and I don't use it much often. Why don't you just take me with you then? I'm sure we'd have lots of fun whenever I'm free from my responsibilities. Naruto merely smiled. I've limited the number of people who can enter my palace. Although it would be good for me to allow you in trance, I can't do that. You are a distraction that I can't afford. I don't know whether to take it as a compliment or an insult, Mei said, a smile on her face. She didn't mind if this wasn't his real body. As long as they could talk, she was happy. When you finish whatever it is that you are doing, will we enjoy our relationship? Naruto nodded. Hi, he said. I've really neglected you, haven't I? Although Mei was surprised that he would admit it, she still nodded. I must apologize for it. I can't say that I know what it is like to be neglected. My parents died the day I was born, and after that, it was hell that I experienced. Loneliness and self-loathing. It isn't fair for me to hate the people who made me suffer, and yet make you suffer. I care for you, but those days, I couldn't express anything because I didn't know how to, and I had little emotions. However, I've acquired an important piece that has joined the pieces of my being and made me whole. This piece also brought new experiences that I can follow. His tone was just soothing, calm, not lacking the right emotion. It is all right. The important thing is to realize that you are wrong and seek to correct it. The problem with many people in our world is that they don't want to admit that they are wrong. Mei said, sounding happy with his confession. That was his problem with Konoha. Those godforsaken, wrenched, ignorant pieces of meat, those demons wearing the mask of humans were despicable, violent. He would. Naruto. Mei had a worried look on her. Are you a light? Naruto smiled at her. Yes, he said. You must have a lot of questions, it was a statement. Yes, Mei confirmed with a stiff nod. Come with them, I have time, Naruto responded. But before Mei could say anything, Konan walked into the chamber. She stopped when she saw the two in an intimate position. Naruto looked up at her and smiled. Ah, Konan, you've returned. Mei sighed. Her time was over since she had no doubt Naruto was going to leave her to attend the other woman. She looked up to Konan and smiled. Naruto and I were discussing some personal things here, would you like to join us? Konan blinked, and then again. She tilted her head before opening her mouth to speak, but words refused to leave. Chapter 38. The omnipresent sage. January 1st. Naruto's eyes suddenly snapped open as he felt someone invading his palace. He was one with the place, whatever happened within his space, he knew. There was also the fact that he had placed a barrier around the structure to ensure that nothing that flies stepped its filthy feet on the holy ground he had set aside for himself. The barrier was not one that could be broken. It was made by his will to live. As long as his will to survive was intact, no one could break through it. However, that didn't mean that it couldn't be bypassed. Given the right conditions, a few special people could pass through it, without it breaking it. He wasn't given much time to think as a figure came rushing towards him in blinding speeds. Although his eyes could keep track of the movements, his body refused to follow the speed of his eyes. The attacker was upon him in mere seconds and a hard kick hit him on his forehead. The force was so heavy that it nearly snapped his neck. Nearly being the case. The result of the brutal kick was Naruto crashing through his throne, a throne crafted with the hardest material on the entire structure. But he didn't break even a bone. Of course the pain of the coursed through his head like he had been hit by a sledgehammer. Because the throne was crafted with strong materials, the flight of the kick didn't send him crashing through the wall that was behind the throne within the hall. He did hit the wall, but much of the sting had already been taken out by the throne, so he was not able to break through it. He hit it with his back and managed to fell down on the floor on his knees. Before he could even look up at his attacker, a very familiar blue Susanoo appeared above him. The Susanoo hit the ceiling and tore apart his hall, allowing the sun to finally enter the place. The Susanoo wings were flapped and its blade swinging down towards him in fast movements. More of his palace was torn apart because of the power behind the swing of the blade. The swing was powerful enough to cut him in half. Naruto knew this. It wouldn't kill him though, but in this current state, he was going to avoid it at all costs. He quickly held out both his hands in preparation for his defense. The powerful barrier he put above him was able to hold up as the swing struck. However, the collision of the sword with his defense created a strong shockwave that spread around the hall. The shockwave was powerful enough to send large cracks around the walls of the hall. The floor around Naruto was turned into a hole. Seeing this destruction, Naruto knew that he would to rebuild his precious palace. If that wasn't enough, the attacker didn't let up in his attack. He kept pressing for dominance, pushing Naruto further down. And he was already at a disadvantage. He may have been able to block the swing, but the force behind it had pitched much pain throughout his body. It was only his strong will that he did not drop his cracking defense. Naruto cursed when another Susanoo rushed towards him using the floor while the blue one was still above him. He couldn't possibly defend himself now given the current situation. The incoming Susanoo swung its blade level to the floor, picking up strong gusts of wind as it matched towards him. Naruto left his left hand holding the defense above him and held out his right to create another defense on his side. It was futile, he knew it. But he couldn't give up like that. As soon as the sword of the Susanoo on the floor reached him, the sword above him disappeared, leaving him at the mercy of the incoming blade. The hit felt like a slap from Kami. Powerful, it nearly cut through his body and split his guards out for the hungry sky birds to feed. But his defense did enough to stop that from happening. But he was still sent rocketing throughout at the palace. The force carried him outside the holy ground and left much destruction on his palace. He was definitely going to have to rebuild it again. And this time he would make sure that it was not destroyed by anyone. Before gravity could pull him down the ground, since he was no longer in his sky ground, both his attackers appeared above him. Naruto could only curse as both slammed him hard on the chest and gut respectively. Both hits were rather painful. It was like the hammers of justice had taken a swing at him. His insides cried in pain and a few ribs cracked. But given enough time, they would heal. That wasn't the most important thing though. He was currently rocketing down the ground. He passed the clouds that had presented themselves for the day. The people of his capital watched with interest as a rocket rushed over down the city in great speed. You would think that they would be running around in fear thinking that is going to explode on them. Lucky for them, Naruto's fall from the heavens was a bit away from the civilization, however, he fell on some buildings that had been recently completed. His fall was enough to send the buildings down the ground to rumbles. More things that needed to be rebuilt. The capital nearly shook at the fall, putting everyone on alert. A large smoke of debris disturbed anyone from seeing anything. When it finally disappeared, Naruto was lying down on a large crater on his back. His mouth leaking some blood, hands stretched out wide. His breathing labored, eyes dimly opened. On the edge of the crater, Sasuke and Madara were looking down impassively with both their respective hands folded across their chests. It didn't take a full minute for the place to be surrounded by the special corps of the capital. Such a scene was not acceptable and they were ready to deal with the threat that dare disrespect the emperor. They had been trained to deal with such insolence against his majesty. Shinji rushed over to Naruto. Your Excellency, shall we exterminate the problem for this sin? It wasn't a good sight to see the emperor down on the ground, looking broken. The sight of the emperor in this kind of situation made his blood boil, but not enough to make him act rashly. Naruto merely raised his hand and waved it in a dismissive manner. I will deal with those two. Despite looking broken, his tone was still firm, he was still lying on the ground as he spoke. Shinji wouldn't question the emperor, and he wouldn't his power. Hi, he responded before giving a signal for his men to leave. They left without a word of complaint. After everyone listened to the orders, Naruto got on one knee and looked at both his attackers. I see, he stated, seeing that Sasuke also had the Rinnegan. But after this, he would not be having it, he would take it. Hagoromo gave them passage to my palace. That foolish child, I will punish him. He's never listened to his mother. I thought that would do much damage on him given his current state, Sasuke said to Madara, his eyes firmly fixed down on Naruto. Really, the previous attack was enough to kill anyone. But Naruto was still alive, but he still took some damage. He might be weakened, but he is still no weakling. I was not expecting much damage, but it seems that he has taken quite a knock, Madara responded so casually. Naruto had escaped with his life on the previous attack he had executed so perfectly, he was certainly not going to underestimate him again. Sasuke studied Naruto's further, before nodding. The blonde had taken quite a knock. If things continued like this, Naruto would lose. Shall we send him to the battlefield? Madara said, grinning at the thought. Sharing a real battlefield with Naruto. Their last encounter was one-sided. He didn't want this one to be like that. However, if it couldn't be helped, he would do with what he was offered. Even though Sasuke didn't know where the battlefield was, he just decided to follow Madara's lead. Both sped towards Naruto's position, the blonde was still on one knee. In a blur, they were both in front of him, left and right legs in position for brutal kicks. Naruto could only bring out both his hands to lessen the damage on his body. When both kicks from his attackers hit him, he was sent rocketing away from the village, and again, like a bullet. To add to the insult, a powerful wind hit him and propelled him further away from the capital. Naruto did not regain his composure until he hit a few trees along his flight. When he recovered, both Madara and Sasuke were not close to him, they were moving towards another location, further away from the capital. He decided to follow them. He sped across the rocks of the Rice Kingdom using his fastest speed. It took him a few minutes to finally reach both Uchihas, and Naruto was welcomed into a large ring, it was just clear ground. Madara seemed to have prepared a battlefield for them. You guys certainly know how to invite one to a battle, Naruto stated, looking at the other Uchihas with a calm look on his face. It seems that you have actually gotten close to Hagoromo's power, Madara. It seems I have. Madara responded with a small shrug. You have also recovered well. I didn't think you would be in such a better condition after all that. It may appear that I am in a better condition, but I'm not well at all. Even to fix the damage you two have already caused, my body burns too much chakra. Naruto said, looking at his hands. I am up for talking once we are done fighting. I cannot settle well while I know you can still fight. Sasuke interrupted the conversation between Naruto and Madara. Really, he was not going to give Naruto much chance to recover. How impatient, Madara stated on Sasuke. He earned a subtle nod from Naruto. But I guess it can't be helped. He looked straight at Naruto. You can't have any complaints because it is 2-on-1. Well, I can complain. It is a bit unfair that you two get to gang up on me while I am at this state. You have also taken my left eye. But I guess that won't change anything, Naruto responded, looking a bit thoughtful. Enough. Sasuke raised his voice. Let us get this over with. Both Naruto and Madara merely shook their heads. I will tell you this, he may look weakened, but don't underestimate him. He makes ninjutsu useless, and don't play around. Madara stated, not even looking at whom he was advising. As much as he would like to have fun with Naruto, the situation did not favor it. Especially when he was suspecting that Naruto cannot be killed. I don't plan on playing. I wish not to waste valuable chakra, it may come in handy if I have to deal with another threat, Sasuke responded in a cool tone, taking his stance. The other threat was obviously Madara, but the legendary Uchiha didn't respond to those words. Sasuke did not waste any time, his Susanoo came to live, knowing that only the big guns would work on this kind of a battlefield. Within seconds, he had already shot an arrow straight at Naruto. He was impressed when Naruto actually dodged it, despite the speed that made it near impossible to dodge. You will have to shoot those a bit faster if you are going to hit me, Naruto stated, now floating in the air above where he had been standing. His eyes looked around the place, there were no trees, or anything that seemed to be alive. It was just the unclothed ground, full of a few rocks and holes therein. There. How about this then? Madara stated, appearing above Naruto. He was already going through hand seals. Fire style. Majestic flame destroyer. Yes, those destructive flames rushed towards the blonde in fury. They seemed to consume him for a moment, before they just disappeared. Naruto had not even moved from his position. The flames disappeared without even touching him. The only thing he felt from the flames was the heat they brought. After the flames disappeared, he looked above him where Madara was floating. Weren't you the one telling Sasuke that ninjutsu was useless against? Naruto trailed off when he sensed something coming from behind him. He quickly turned around only to be glared down by an arrow dipped in Amaterasu. Diversion, he realized. Naruto raised his right hand before the technique could hit him. The arrow never reached him as it suddenly hit an invisible wall and dispersed into thin air. But it is still not good enough. He stated as his eyes went back to Madara because he felt a chakra spike. The man's Susanoo was already activated and its blade was charging towards him. He raised his left hand to put that his invincible barrier. The blade hit his barrier with much force that sent him away, despite having put his barrier. He really should think twice about putting up a barrier like that in his current condition. Before he could even recover from the momentum, Sasuke was right above. Too bad for the Raven-head Uchiha, Naruto had expected such to occur. The Raven-head attempted to kick him down the ground with his back heel. But Naruto caught the kick with his right hand, and used Sasuke's balance to regain his composure. With his composure regained, he was able to float by himself in the air while still holding Sasuke's leg. The other Uchiha never gave him much time as he twisted and attempted to hit him on the face with his free leg. Naruto was also able to catch that kick. Holding both of Sasuke's feet, Naruto twisted in air before spinning around twice. Once done, he hurled Sasuke away from him and held out his right hand for the real attack. But he never got to use the technique he wanted because he was forced to dodge a spinning kick from Madara. He did not just dodge the kick, he also disappeared from the air and appeared down the ground, landing on his own 2 feet. Both his opponents also took the ground. So far so good. Is it just me or is he becoming faster by the second? Sasuke questioned, standing beside Uchiha Madara. He was not able to hit the blonde with the same speed he had used previously. Despite this, he wasn't the least concerned. He has, but that is the best he can do, for now, Madara responded calmly. Then this should be easy. Sadly, Madara shook his head. You have to put him in an unfavorable position for him to fight with all his might. It was the same with him. He never went all out unless the situation called for it. At the moment, it was not calling for Naruto to go all out. Sasuke was still not deterred. That can be arranged, he disappeared in a speed that even had Madara raising a brow. Within that second, he was in front of Naruto. He twisted, spinning around as he went for a kick on Naruto. The kick hit Naruto's hand that had been raised a shield. But the power of the kick pushed him back. Sasuke was not yet done. He rushed at the blonde, this time using the air, he jumped up and attempted to kick Naruto in the temple again. This time, Naruto jumped back to avoid the kick. The blonde noticed that Madara was merely watching. With the look the man had on his eyes, it appears that he was not going to get in the way for a few moments. He better use this chance now or he was not going to get it again. Sasuke was at him again. But, this time, he attempted a right hook straight at his face. Naruto was more than equal to the punch. He blocked the attack and gripped Sasuke's hand firmly before throwing his own attack. The Uchiha blocked the attack, not wanting to be bettered. But Naruto still did not let his hand go. Look up you, Naruto stated, using his greater physical prowess to hurl Sasuke into the air by his hand. Above them was a portal that looked to devour Sasuke, but it didn't do that. The portal spat out chakra rods that rushed at the incoming Raven head. To avoid being pierced by the rods, Sasuke went through hand seals. Fire style. Great fireball jutsu. He released a fireball that hit the rods with all its glaring heat. The jutsu did enough to block the rods from piercing through his flesh. Even though ninjutsu was useless against Naruto, it still had its uses against him in a battle. Do not forget that I am still free, Naruto suddenly spoke from under the Uchiha. Sasuke cursed, but was quick enough to react. Before Naruto could even hit him with a brutal kick on his back, he quickly activated a small portion of his Susanoo. Damage averted and Naruto made his distance from him. Both then hit the ground on their feet. Naruto was the first to make his move. He clasped both his hands together and the ground began to shake. Not so long, a large rock was pulled down from the earth into the air. Without wasting much time, Naruto directed it down towards Sasuke. It was of quite a size, and not something a weak jutsu could deal with. Sasuke activated his Susanoo quickly, after having deactivated it when he landed on the ground so to preserve his chakra. He quickly shot 2 arrows in quick succession towards the large rock that looked to crush him under its might. His arrows hit the rock and shattered it into harmless pieces. But before he could do anything else, Naruto was already in front of him. Sasuke was not fast enough to do anything as the blonde placed his right hand on his Susanoo and much to his surprise, it disappeared without his command. He did not feel like Naruto deactivated from outside. It felt like he had been stripped of it. That had never happened before. Naruto was still holding his right hand, but he had a small smile on his face. A small black ball appeared on his palm before it was shot towards him. His instincts screamed danger when he saw the ball. Naruto was quick to make his disappearance as the ball exploded into a large explosion. Sasuke was able to escape the explosion with nothing but a few bruises thanks to his Susanoo. He brought out his hands from his face, which he had used to shield himself from the debris. He looked at the debris that was still joyfully dancing about and then at Naruto. That thing was certainly dangerous, and he did not want to get hit by it. Without wasting much time, he dispersed his Susanoo and charged at Naruto again. When he reached the blonde, it seemed that the blonde was waiting for him. His right was raised with its palm facing him. A portal opened just in front of him and Sasuke got the feeling that he knew what was going to come out of it. As he thought, chakra rods came out of it. He was forced to halt his movements so not to become hit by the chakra rods. He too raised his right hand and blasted the rods away from him. You have improved from our last battle. Naruto's voice suddenly echoed from behind him making his eyes wide. He had not sensed him move. Sasuke winced painfully when an unbelievable force connected with his back sending him flying. It hurt like bitch. He did not know what actually hit him. It did not matter as he had other matters to deal with. While he was still being carried by the force of whatever hit him, another large rock was flying towards him. He braced himself as the rock hit him dead on. If that was not enough, Naruto appeared under him and kicked him into the air. He did not stop there. He appeared above him again and crashed his right foot on his chest before sending him crashing down the ground like a bullet. The crash was a bit painful, but he was used to this kind of pain. Slowly, Sasuke got up and spat out some blood. He smirked. You are taking this serious now. I guess I should kick it up a notch. Before Naruto could even comprehend what the Uchiha was saying, in the blink of an eye, Sasuke was gripping his face tightly with his right hand. Before he could mount a struggle to get loose from the grip, the raven head lifted him into the air, before forcefully slamming him down the ground. Sasuke did not let go of him on that moment. He stomped his foot on his chest, pressing him further down the ground. If this is the best you can do, then this will be done quickly, the Uchiha stated, as his hands sounding like chirping birds. He drove his Chidori towards Naruto's head, but the blonde was able to tilt his quickly to avoid the jutsu. The hand holding the jutsu pierced the ground before the jutsu died down. Sasuke retrieved his hand before he attempted to punch the blonde while he was still down. But Naruto caught the fist with his right hand and quickly held out his left hand. You are a little too close to me, Naruto stated as Sasuke was blasted away from an invincible force. Never minding how quickly the Uchiha recovered, Naruto got up and dusted himself. But before he could finish, two heavy kicks from the front and back him brutally. He was certain a few bones in his rib cage broke. The force of both kicks was powerful enough to render him immobile for a few seconds. But that was all that Madara needed. The elder Uchiha's Susanoo came to life and its blade never shied away from Naruto. It hit him hard while he was still immobile. Had it not been for the haste barrier he put up, it would have possibly cut him in half. Naruto was sent flying instead of being cut in half, and the other end, Sasuke's own Susanoo was waiting for him. Its mighty fist crashed onto him from above and slammed him onto the ground to create another crater. No time was he given to recover, Sasuke shot 3 arrows down at the crater in quick successions. They were not just normal arrows, they were also coated with amaterasu. They hit the crater creating an explosion and the black flames to come live within the explosion. Madara also added his own attack. He formed a large rock above the target before allowing it to drop in a fast speed. His opponent was Naruto, it would not be fair to go easy on him. The rock crashed down on the blonde, creating a smoke of dust. Naruto responded by walking out of the crater in slow movements. But he was not unharmed. It was far from it. He had a couple of bruises what were leaking some blood and as well his mouth. His cloak was torn apart as well as sporting burns. He still looked like he was going for another round. I thought you were going to allow Sasuke to have some fun, Naruto stated after he got out of the crater he had been nearly buried under. Sasuke noticed something peculiar with Naruto's wounds, they were healing, albeit slowly. He was positive that Madara had noticed it too. But he did not seem too surprised by it. You have already started the process of reviving the Jubi. The more time I waste, the Jubi is revived, and since I can't get to it with you standing, it's not good for me. I have to work towards seeing you down, Madara responded, ever so calmly. Hashirama no doubt told you that, Naruto sighed at the thought. The process of reviving the Jubi should be done soon. But don't worry, you will see it after it fully forms. I don't want to see it with you under your feet. If something like that happens, things will end for me. Madara was never shy to admit this reality. It was Naruto after all. There was nothing to be embarrassed about. Well, it can't be helped, Naruto said, referring to the fact that if Madara wanted to see the Jubi in his own terms, he would have to bring him down on his knees, and that would not be an easy task. Your wounds are healing, have you regained your power? Possibly, but not all of it, Naruto responded. He wasn't afraid to tell his opponents that he was not at full power. Madara knew it already, so there was no good reason to hide. It was not like it gave them any advantage in this battle. Do you know why I'm like this, Madara? Despite the grave internal damage you did to my body, I should have recovered quickly, especially after I'd synchronized with the Gedo Mazo. Madara narrowed his eyes at the blonde. What are you saying? The world is much more than it seems, grandfather. There are things you've not seen, things that even you couldn't hope to comprehend. To understand a bit of the world, you must go back at creation, and ask yourself these questions. How did humans come to be alive? How did the Shinju come to this world? How long have the beings in the summon world been alive? Naruto threw words at Madara's face, looking completely neutral. Then, if you were to be asked those questions, what would be your answer? And what does that have to do with your recovery? Madara queried, eyes fully narrowed at Naruto. Just by looking at him, he could see that the blonde was very much in the mood to kill some time. My answer, that is for another day. Should you be alive after this, you will know of it, Naruto responded, smiling at a bit. The Shinju is a force of nature, if you could say. And there might be such things as gods who watch over humanity. We already have a death god, why didn't we ever implore the possibility of seeing more kinds of gods? Is it because we never saw them? Then if so, who first discovered the Shinigami? He isn't of this realm. That was just questioning creation itself and to be able to understand it all. Are you saying that these other gods don't wish for you to be well? Naruto shook his head. I'm merely throwing in a possibility. What I do know is that, Hashirama interferes with my time too much. And the laws of nature are against my evolution. However, I already exist between life and death, such laws can't bind me. Hashirama thinks that I don't know what he's been up to, but I know it all. Hashirama isn't the one who interferes, but you don't need to know who. Are you saying that Hashirama has been interfering with you? Naruto nodded. He has taught that child a few things, he said looking at Sasuke. He really doesn't wish for me to become an abomination, but that isn't for him to decide. I've freed myself from the shackles of fate, and tore the script she'd written for me. The heavens are within my grasp, and what you suspect of me is true, Madara. Not being part of the conversation, Sasuke chose to attack Naruto. Amaterasu, he stated as he attempted to set Naruto on fire with Amaterasu. Naruto merely raised his right hand and the flames came to life right in front of his hand. It did not take long for them to disperse. He looked at Sasuke who was on his right side. I can sense your build-up of chakra on your left eye. If you want to hit me, you will have to be faster than that, he looked back at Madara on his left. You used limbo. Don't you think increasing the numbers is a bit unfair given that it is already 2-on-1? Madara shrugged. You can also increase if you choose to, or unless you just can't, his eyes narrowed at the part of his words. Naruto only had one Rinnegan. Even though he was using his original eyes with the Mangekyo Sharingan, he couldn't use his full power. However, if Naruto was being truthful, it may not matter. Naruto shook his head. That won't do, he said. My shadows against yours will equal to a draw. How about we just put it on a draw? It is enough that I have to focus on two of you. Fine, then. I can work about with the handicap. But if the situation calls for it, I will bring them out, Madara stated smoothly. You know, grandfather, I know for certain that you are only agreeing to this because you know that they are not effective when your opponent can see them and make them like you do, Naruto responded, shaking his head. Sasuke was currently feeling left out of this conversation. He still didn't get how Madara can say that he couldn't waste time but still talk like that. And while they talked, this gave time for Naruto heal himself. His wounds were already closing, and he had not burned that much chakra. Perhaps, but it does not really matter, Madara stated. He went on to slam both his hands on the ground. The ground beneath Naruto shook and a rock sprouted beneath him, taking him to flight. The blonde tried well to keep his balance. This was just target practice for Sasuke. He shot 2 arrows at Naruto in quick succession. Naruto did not use the weird technique he has been using. A portal just opened up in front of him and swallowed the arrows. Danger averted for the blonde. But Madara still had his own attack coming. He was already charging at the blonde with his Susanoo in full force by the time Sasuke shot his arrows at Naruto. Upon reaching the blonde, its blade cleaved through the rock formation, breaking his support. He did not stop there, another swing was directed at the blonde. For his own health, Naruto raised both his hands to create a shield. Like always, the blade failed to cut him but was able to send him flying away because of its brute power. While Naruto was still being carried by the momentum, Sasuke appeared above him, with his Susanoo. Unpredictable. Is it teleportation? Naruto thought, seeing Sasuke above him. He was going to get hit, that was certain. The fist of Sasuke's Susanoo pummeled him to the ground in blinding speeds. His crash on the precious earth was another crater. Before Naruto could even think of recovering, Madara was right above him. The man punched him hard on the chest, compelling him further on the ground, before he disappeared. Naruto could only wince and cough up blood in impact of the punch. Despite this, and while he was still lying on the ground, he spoke in a calm tone. Why don't we talk about my physical change? You never allowed me to talk that last time we met. He initiated another conversation again. You will tell me about it after I become the Jinchuriki of the Jubi. Madara responded dismissively. Though he was curious, he couldn't allow the blonde to buy himself more time. Last time you made a proclamation like that, you almost drained all of my chakra and nearly killed me by chakra exhaustion. I think I should be scared, Naruto stated, looking at the clear sky. The clouds had disappeared, perhaps as an honor of this day. But I did not get what I want. I will not fail this time, Madara stated in a firm tone. He held both his hands together, channeling chakra. Especially given your current condition. I did a number on you last time. The legendary Uchiha sounded very much proud about the effort. Well, given Naruto's power, he had to be proud. Before Naruto could respond, wooden structures fell on him and kept him grounded. He was pinned down on both his legs, restricting his movements, the other was restraining his neck, pinning it down on the ground. His hands were no special to the case. But he still spoke like nothing was wrong. You seem positive that my current power is not enough to deal with both of you. But have I truly become weakened? In this condition, what is it that has weakened? Am I really vulnerable to attack? Naruto threw a fit of questions, while still looking above. There was nowhere he could look really. His head was locked into the ground after all. Madara narrowed his eyes. If you are as powerful as you were when we met, then why don't you show it to me, the Uchiha stated. In their previous encounter, Naruto barely escaped, or was it not as it looked? Sasuke found this certainly curious. Naruto was not the one that said things just for the sake of saying them. According to the Sage of Six Paths, Naruto was vulnerable to attack, he wasn't at his most powerful level, and this would give them a better chance of defeating them. He wasn't told exactly what happened, but he was getting the feeling that Madara and Naruto fought before this day. He could see that Naruto's skin looked a bit pale, and his movements were sort of shaky at times. He could see that he used this time of talking to recover. If anything, Naruto's body was tiring rather easily and he used his time well to recover. But it also seemed that hit by hit, the blonde was becoming stable and a little stronger. You never allowed me to explain my physical change. Perhaps I should explain it now for you to understand what I am about to say, Naruto stated, still locked down by the ground by the wooden structures. I told you that I killed Zetsu. Well, I lied about that. I didn't kill him. My physical change is the result of a fusion, if you could say. But I wouldn't call it that. My change is because I consumed Kagaya, her power, body, and mind. Madara narrowed his eyes. He was suspecting as much, but he did not think that Naruto would do that. How did that come to? Sasuke sure that Kagaya was Hagoromo's mother, but that man did not tell him that Naruto had done such a thing. If Naruto had consumed her, then it would explain why he felt much powerful than he was at the cage summit. If Kagaya was Hagoromo's mother, then she too had to be ridiculously strong. By why would Naruto consume her? Was it all just for power? Kagaya was sealed away by her sons the same time as the Jubi. I won't tell you much of it though. But before she was sealed away, she created Zetsu with the will to revive her. Black Zetsu was never your will, he just latched onto the opportunity to when you thought you were transferring a part of your mind onto white Zetsu. The Uchiha stone tablets were not written by Hagoromo, it was Zetsu's doing. Zetsu's purpose was to revive Kagaya, and the only one who can revive her was someone with the Rinnegan. Let us not get to history, but you can figure out that Zetsu had been using you. Now then, Naruto stated rather calmly. The wooden structures holding him down the ground shattered into small pieces. He then stood up from the crater. If have not yet deduced you full potential, but if this is the best you can do, you cannot defeat me. I may end up killing both of you. As you said, you haven't seen our full power. Don't go around making such conclusions before you even see us at our best, Sasuke stated, a little annoyed at the dismissive tone Naruto had used. I will explain to you my current condition, is only that my body that is weak. However, I can heal from any wound but I can't seem to access some of my abilities. However, it is not a problem to me, the jutsus that are available to me are more than enough for both of you, Naruto stated calmly. Still, his lack of the left Rinnegan wasn't much of a bother to him. Sasuke disappeared from view and appeared before Naruto in an instant. He did not appear to be attacking, as he spoke. Like I said, you have not seen our full power. Don't go around underestimating us. Naruto only narrowed his eyes. His brows rose up when Sasuke produced his own black ball. This was unexpected. He did not think that such thing was going to happen. But it was nothing he couldn't handle. He quickly disappeared from the Uchiha's sight, but when he appeared to another location, Sasuke was still with him. Sasuke didn't wait long with him, he made his distance. Boom. The ball of black energy exploded in Naruto's face. The blonde was quick to shield his face with both his hands as he jumped away from the explosion. His clock was not so lucky to escape from explosion. He was able to shield his body by strengthening his hair to avoid being much damage. Weak, Naruto muttered. He was referring to the jutsu Sasuke had thrown at him. Before he could continue on his thoughts, Madara appeared behind him. The Uchiha had his palm facing him and without much time wasted. He was forcefully blown away by a silent Shinra Tensei. The force behind the jutsu felt like his body was being pressed down by tons of weight, and it hurt like crap. He was not given the time to recover, as Sasuke and his clone, armed with Susanoo, shot multiple arrows at him. Naruto quickly raised both his hands, and used the same technique he had been using before. The arrows that threatened to dip their fangs on his body were dispersed. Naruto raised his right hand high after recovering, multiple portals opened up in the sky above them. When they did, they started spitting out large chunks of earth in rock formations. But they were shaped as spikes that looked dangerous. The rocks were coming down around the battlefield in fast speeds. Naruto watched for a second as both Sasuke and Madara danced around the battlefield attempting to run away from the rocks. Without wasting much further time, he was right about Sasuke, who was busy trying to dodge the raining rocks. He held out his right hand again and touched the Susanoo. Like last time, it disappeared. And Naruto moved far quicker than Sasuke expected. He punched the Uchiha straight on his gut with a very brutal punch. He was not done, he spun around and hit Sasuke with another brutal kick on his head. He never allowed Sasuke to be carried by the force of the kick. He grabbed his left leg and slammed the Uchiha down the ground very brutally. He then turned on Madara, the portals above them had closed. The notorious Uchiha was now looking straight at him. He held out his right hand, and formed a Rasenshuriken, its center being a small orb of black energy like the truth-seeking ball. He threw the jutsu straight at the man. Madara held out both his hands and to shield himself from the jutsu. But it merely exploded upon contact. Too much power than I anticipated, he muttered. Naruto looked behind him as he sensed something. Sasuke was already on his feet and the Susanoo alive. The arrow he soared towards him was almost 3 times as big as the ones he had been shooting, and it came at even faster speed. The blonde knew with that speed, his jutsu could not shatter it in time. He would have to stop it before shattering it. And with the speed, the feat were near impossible. He held out both his hands as the arrow reached him. As the technique flashed before him, he caught the arrow, but its speed pushed him back a few feet back. For what Sasuke thought he would never see, Naruto was doing it. He was struggling with his large arrow with his hands. While Naruto was still struggling, Madara charged from behind. The sword of his Susanoo cleaving through the ground as it sped towards him. Dangerous. His hands and energy were both tied up in his struggle with the arrow. But before the blade of Madara's Susanoo could reach him, Naruto twisted around on his right, while his hands were still holding the arrow from Susanoo. He directed the arrow to the path of the blade and the two collided, making a shockwave. Naruto received the full end of it. But Madara was not quite done yet. The second blade of his Susanoo rushed towards Naruto, coming down on his left side. He was at its mercy, and it took him out into the air. He was not given the chance for a breather. Sasuke teleported right above him before slamming him down the ground with a brutal punch to his chest. By the time Naruto hit the ground, he already had a dislocated shoulder caused by being hit by Madara's blade. He received no pity from his opponents. Sasuke shot an arrow down at him with the simple purpose of pinning him down the ground while Madara worked. A large rock was thrown down at him, crushing him under its might. Both waited for a few moments, as everything that was above Naruto was blasted away from him. Naruto, now that he was given a breather, managed to get on his knees. He grimaced at the thought of fixing his dislocated left shoulder. It was not the only thing wrong with him though. His breathing was labored, blood all over his tattered cloak. Before he could even think of fixing his shoulder, Sasuke appeared in front of him before hitting him with a focused Shinra Tensei. The jutsu sent him hurling into the air, but he was not given the chance to hit any of the rumbles around the clearing. Madara was right above him with a large wooden pole. He swung it downwards with all his might, and hit him with it. Naruto felt things break upon contact and he coughed some unhealthy amount of blood. And that was before he could even hit the ground. When he did, it felt like he had been cursed by Kami. This was surely a punishment of some sort. He continued to cough more blood while down on the ground on his back. Naruto held out his right hand, knowing that both his opponents could hear him, he spoke. Both of you have Hashiramo's powers. Madara was still powerful on his own right, and he stole some of my power. But I have been able to take some of it back. Despite his beaten and broken form, he still spoke like he was okay and his breathing had also calmed down. I wonder what he was thinking. Well, it doesn't matter, Naruto finished in thought. And you are becoming weaker by the minute, Sasuke responded. Naruto did not say a word for a moment. He stood up from the crater and fixed his left shoulder. He held out both his hands before bringing them back to his sides. Shall I see your full power? This time it was Madara who responded. I guess it can't be helped, he said. They were not getting anywhere at the moment. Yes, Naruto was receiving some damage, but he was still healing. What he had noticed was that he was not fully healing. The progress was there, albeit slow. It was not good enough for him. As though in sync, both Madara and Sasuke activated their perfect Susanoo's. Naruto spoke before they could make a move to attack him. Although both of you have Hashiramo's power, none of you can access the truth-seeking balls. I thought you were using them, but those are just cheap imitations. He was not given a response in words. Instead, Sasuke swung the blade of his Susanoo while charging towards him. Naruto jumped into the air before holding out his right hand. Shinra Tensei, he muttered, releasing a concentrated force on Sasuke's Susanoo. What Sasuke thought could not happen, to his perfect Susanoo occurred. The jutsu forced his Susanoo backwards before it finally stumbled down on its behind. Sasuke looked straight at Naruto. That was just some powerful force, he thought. It took all his power to maintain his Susanoo while the jutsu hit him. And by the looks of it, Naruto was not pleased with the result. If he was going to test and see just how powerful Naruto was, he would have to stand up and face the blonde. Madara flapped the wings of his Susanoo and took the air above Naruto. The blade of his Susanoo was cleaving through the air as it charged down at Naruto. From the speed, it was certainly dangerous and he could not block something like this. A swing of a perfect Susanoo could cut through a mountain. With his current body, he was by no means stronger than a mountain. He disappeared into one of his portals and appeared above Madara. Madara's slashed cut through the ground like a knife cutting through butter. Naruto held out both his hands while still above the Uchiha. Both his palms faced the Susanoo. Shinra Tensei, again, the same jutsu he did on Sasuke. But in this position, it favored him. Given the weight of the Susanoo, gravity was surely going to work even better. On cue, Madara's perfect Susanoo was slammed hard by the force of his jutsu and it crashed down the ground in a boom that created a large shockwave. Naruto was not yet done though. He opened a large portal above him and multiple wooden pillars began to appear from it. Before he could direct them towards Madara, Sasuke acted. The Uchiha shot an arrow that barely missed him. But that was intentional on the Uchiha's part. The arrow was aimed at the portal. The projectile hit the wooden pillars causing them to break apart as an explosion occurred. The portal closed shortly after that. Madara was at it again. Before Naruto could do anything after Sasuke's attack, he shot a large blue beam of energy towards the blonde. Speed and the amount of power behind the jutsu screamed danger to him. Naruto held out both his hands. His right was open facing the beam coming from Madara, his left was left facing Sasuke. Just when Madara's jutsu was about to hit him, portals opened on both his sides, each in front of his hands. The portal on his right consumed the beam of energy from Madara and the portal on his left spat it out, speed doubled and towards Sasuke. The Uchiha brought both hands of his Susanoo to shield from the beam. When it collided with the Susanoo, an explosion occurred. The ground beneath the raven head shook for a moment before everything calmed down. Sasuke was not hurt by the jutsu, his Susanoo protected him. Naruto looked down at both his opponents. "Don't disappoint me," he said. He did not wait for them to attack him though, he held out his right hand, summoning a large black sphere of energy. Madara, knowing the danger, quickly jumped up to the blonde and swung his blade towards him. The aim was to cut him in half or at least disrupt his control over the sphere, but Naruto disappeared from view along with the large ball of energy. He appeared a distance away, still holding the ball. Now, then, for a good explosion, Naruto started, still floating in the air. To be able to survive this attack, you will have to use your natural energy in defense, or else you will all turn to ash. After saying those words, Naruto threw the large sphere of energy between the two perfect Susanoo's. Upon hitting the ground, the ball exploded into a large mushroom of debris that shook the entire battlefield. Naruto simply watched with a smile on his face before he descended down the ground. A second later, he was on one knee coughing up some blood. That was to be expected. He had already received much damage on his body and he really should not be using high-powered speed to move about, especially when carrying something like a truth-seeking ball of that magnitude. It was putting a lot of pressure on his body. If he didn't do something quickly, he would surely lose this battle. His chakra reserves were being drained much faster than normal. Naruto then stood up, and wiped the blood off his lips. He was put on alert as both Sasuke and Madara charged at him, both still had their Susanoo's activated. The former was doing so using the ground, while the other used the air. And in an instant, their swords sped towards him, cutting through the air, and Naruto was put in the situation he was put before while they were still at his palace. This time though, he was able to defend himself well. He blocked both swords using his manipulation of wind and gravity. But the ground beneath him wasn't very much lucky. The contact of his defense jutsu and the two blades caused a large shockwave that reached inside his own heart, giving it so much pressure that he thought it would explode. The ground beneath him turned into a large crater due to the force of the attacks. Both Madara and Naruto Sasuke retrieved their weapons, allowing Naruto to breathe. He needed it. His whole body nearly absorbed the power of two swings from two Susanoo's. That was just playing dangerous. The effects of his dangerous play did not do well to his body at all. Naruto dropped to his knees coughing up blood, hands on his chest. He really should not have done that. Although Madara didn't say anything, he felt proud and was very much awed by the feat Naruto had achieved. He didn't block just a swing from a Susanoo, he blocked slashes from two perfect Susanoos, and that was a feat no one could reach, especially when they weren't using some big to catch the blade. What he had discovered so far about Naruto's jutsu was that it was gravity that he was manipulation. The basic manipulation the Rinnegan offered was to push and pull things towards him. Naruto was using it on another level. Somehow, he was able to distort the space around him, slow time down for a second and then create a wall but didn't push things from him. No, he stopped them from reaching him. However, that wasn't all there was to the jutsu. He'd seen it before with Sasuke's arrows. Naruto was able to make him disperse upon stopping them, depending on the size, speed and power. He could guess that it was because of his ability to nullify all forms of ninjutsu. However, he'd thought to be able to nullify ninjutsu, you'd need the truth-seeking balls. Naruto only used them for attacking, not for defense. Why? Despite Naruto's condition, his opponents felt no pity for him. Sasuke cleaved through the ground with his blade, but Naruto was only hit by the powerful gusts of wind it produced. Given his current state, the winds forced him into the sky and Madara was right above him, without his Susanoo though. Naruto cursed when Madara used Limbo Hengoku on him. Two shadows of Madara did him no favor when they both brutally pummeled him to the ground. Yes, something definably broke as he hit the ground. Worse, his left shoulder had dislocated again. Blood was now freely matching out of his mouth as he stayed down the ground. If the shadow's brutality was not enough, Madara crashed both his feet on his chest. The reaction from the blonde was in an instant and it was a bit pitiful. More blood being spat out. If things continued, he would bleed all of his blood. What was also certain was that he was not going to stand on his feet for a few minutes. Grandfather, don't you find it odd that despite having the Rinnegan, Sasuke can't see your shadows? Naruto asked a puzzling question at the elder Uchiha. Madara looked at Sasuke for a moment. It was indeed odd. One with the Rinnegan should be able to see them, but by the looks of things, Sasuke couldn't see them. Why? He shook his head. Naruto was doing rather in stalling for time by asking those kinds of questions that would get him to think. He held his hands together. Tengai Shinsei. Just when Naruto was thinking of getting some rest, a large meteorite came crashing down towards him. You have to be kidding me. Perhaps grandfather wishes to kill me. Despite saying so, he only sounded amused by the thought. No fear of death came close to him. These two couldn't kill him. He slowly held both his hands together as the meteorite seemingly crushed him under its weight. The ground shook violently as the large rock from space pummeled Earth under its might. Naruto would not have surely survived if something like that hit him. And Madara and Sasuke had used their abilities to stay away from the path of the space rock. The shaking of the ground settled down, debris cleared, and another slope of the battleground was introduced. Naruto appeared above the battleground, floating in air. He was still in the same position as he was when he hit the ground. Sasuke, the blonde called, without even looking at the raven head Uchiha. Depending on the answer you give me after this, you will live or die. Given the current condition Naruto was in, Sasuke only scoffed. Yay, right, he agreed sarcastically. But Naruto didn't respond. You did well, you dodged that. But it appears that you can't fight anymore. Then I won't waste much time, Madara stated, holding a single-hand seal. He shot multiple chakra rods straight at the blonde, but they never reached him. They were blasted away by another invincible force, and Naruto quickly got to his feet while still in air. Despite his wounds and injury, he still looked fine with the expression on his face. The Jubi has finally been revived, he announced. Do you know something, Madara? The Gedo Mazo was locked deep within my palace. I only released it when I wanted to revive the Jubi. I've also been holding back some of my chakra to keep my special dimension from collapsing. A very, very large portal opened above the sky. Naruto continued speaking. This is why my wounds took too long to heal. While my body has been weak, I still had much power. However, my body is just weak to handle it all. This is what Hagoromo meant when he said I am vulnerable. Now, then, say hello to the 10 tails. Sasuke widened his eyes as the thing called the 10 tails dropped out of the portal above them. It was ridiculously huge. He thought that Bijou's were big, but this thing just made the 9 tails looks like a pet fox. Despite its ridiculous size, it landed on the ground gracefully, but it did shake the ground a bit. Before Madara or Sasuke could do anything, both found themselves surrounded by truth-seeking balls. You should never take your eyes on your opponent, even if he is down. Naruto stated. He did not wish for them to interfere. This won't kill you, but it will hurt you. Then, the spheres of energy exploded. Now, then, I will have to seal the Jubi inside of me to begin things. Without my left eye, I can't do things the way I would have liked. But this will still get me to the same point, Naruto stated, as he went through hand seals. I did not expect him to have hid these things around me, Madara stated, as he watched the very thing he did not want happening, Naruto becoming the Jinchuriki of the Jubi. He had already used his other trump card. Naruto knew he wouldn't be allowed to seal the Jubi inside of him without interference, that is why he held them back with the truth-seeking balls. He could say that it was a perfect diversion, it had rendered him unable to do anything but watch. What is happening? Sasuke questioned, shielding his eyes as the Jubi seemed to disappear and winds began to pick up. Naruto is becoming the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, Madara responded, so casually as though it did not bother him. Aren't you going to stop him? Sasuke was starting to panic a little. He knew that the Bijuis were powerful, and if Naruto became the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, he would be hard to beat. I can't stop him at this moment, Madara responded, sitting down on one of the rocks around the area. Once Naruto started doing the hand seals, he couldn't do anything. When Naruto was doing the required hand seals, he couldn't even move because those cursed truth-seeking balls had surrounded him before exploding, allowing the blonde to finish the hand seals. Naruto would come out soon, and if things go as predicted, he would choose to talk first. A few moments later, a shockwave blasted the debris that had picked up, leaving the battlefield cleared. Naruto was seen standing above the other Uchihas. But his appearance did not look as what Madara had imagined. Naruto no longer possessed his blonde hair, his hair had now turned pitch black, it was long enough to reach his waist, a downgrade from its previous length. His hair also had flashes of red in mixture, a bang still covered his right eye. He was wearing black pants, with no shoes, white bandages covered his feet. His upper body was also wearing white bandages from waist up to his shoulders. The bandages were also on both his hands. The last piece of clothing was a long sleeveless black coat that was hanging over his shoulders, it also had high collar. The coat reached down on his feet. On the back of his coat, there was a pattern of 8 red magatama. He also wore a necklace which was made up of 6 magatama. He was holding the same Shikuho Hagoromo carried and there were 8 truth-seeking balls floating on his back. He'd also regained his left Rinnegan and it had also taken a change, it was the eye of the Jubi. From this, Madara was sure something was wrong in the picture. And Naruto's presence felt ominous. Naruto held out his free left hand, so my human form is dominated by the Senju, Uchiha and Uzumaki DNA in me, he thought before looking down. Sasuke, depending on your answer, you will live or die. Forget Naruto said that. The sage spoke in a smooth tone, that displayed no emotion, yet it was different from the one he always used. It felt natural for him to speak like that. This forced Sasuke to question, who are you? I am the omnipresent sage. But this world will know me as Kami, for I have existed before humans were even created. I am the force of nature, I am the one who brings order and balance into this world. It was a response to Sasuke that the sage gave. Don't make me laugh, Naruto. You are just 17 years old, and I am even older than you. How can you say that you existed before humans, and why do you say humans like you are not one? Sasuke questioned, now glaring up at the blonde. That is because he is no longer human, Madara responded, shocking Sasuke. If I am correct, he fused with the Jubi, but still maintained this form. But if he so wills he can change into the Jubi, just as he can do with Kagaya. It is like a fusion of 3 minds, but Naruto's mind is the basis. He is Kagaya, Naruto and the Jubi. So he has every right to say he has been alive before humans were created. He is not the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, no, he is something else the world has never seen. You got to be freaking kidding me. How do we stop him then? Madara was silent for a few moments. It seems impossible. My last card won't even work on him, he is immortal. Kagaya was immortal and so was the Jubi. Since he is both of them, he has gained their immortality. Madara paused for a moment. Is this your decision to get rid of the Bijuis to make sure that there are no more Jinchurikis? That seems to have been the thought of before all this. The sage paused for a moment. There won't be any Bijuis for all eternity, as they are part of me. The Bijuis were created from me after all. Hagoromo created them using my chakra, so no one should complain and neither can the Bijuis. That logic. Madara shook his head. You have completely erased your humanity. But you still have your memories of being human. Can the process be reversed, and take the Jubi away from him? Sasuke questioned, looking a bit impatient. No, Madara shook his head. He was becoming a little annoyed with Sasuke. At any second, he was going to end up killing him. Before Sasuke could respond, the sage appeared before them. What he did notice was Madara's surprise. Sasuke widened his eyes when he saw a truth-seeking ball attached to Madara's gut. He had not seen that happening. Even though he was going to die, Madara smiled, at least I had some fun. And the world will be a little better with you managing it. The Uchiha turned into ash after a bright explosion. The very thing that surprised Sasuke was the fact that Naruto's expression never changed, not even a little. He did not even look when Madara turned to ash. It was like he was not the least concerned about it. Wasn't Madara his grandfather? How could he remain like that after killing his only alive family? When Sasuke looked into Naruto's left eye, he saw nothing. It was very different from before. Now then, I shall take Hagoromo's power, it is reminding me too much of him. Even though the tone gave no emotions, to Sasuke, it felt natural that Naruto speak like that. It was like there was nothing wrong with the way he was talking. The omnipresent sage snapped his fingers and time stopped moving. The ground beneath Sasuke shook and roots sprouted out from the ground. He snapped his fingers again, and before Sasuke could finger what was happening, the roots quickly surrounded him and sucked out all of Hagoromo's power. His left eye closed for a moment before opening again, the Rinnegan was gone. He then turned away from Sasuke as the roots returned to ground. I should first destroy all the nonsense black Zetsu left behind and take my eye from white Zetsu. Sasuke glared at the back of the sage. Are you forgetting about me? It was then that the sage turned to face the Uchiha. The look the teen was giving him did not concern him. What is it? The sage said you would eventually destroy Konoha. Is this true and will it be out of revenge? Revenge. I have no such emotions, Uchiha. There is only redemption and purification that Rotten Village and any method I think justifiable will be used. Naruto responded looking straight at Sasuke. What gives you the right to purify Konoha and redeem it? Sasuke questioned in a firm tone, eyes glaring at the other Uchiha. Before the sage could even respond, he let go of his shakuho and clutched his head. Sasuke did not even get the chance to ask what had happened because Naruto suddenly disappeared along with his staff. What the hell just happened? Imperial Palace. Naruto could be seen sitting on the remains of his throne, eyes closed. Hagoromo appeared in front of Naruto and spoke. So, this is your curse. It appears so, Naruto responded, opening his left eye. You knew about it, this is why you had Gurren take charge of your kingdom from the beginning. This also explains a lot of things. However, it must be a pain for you know that you are cursed into remaining in this palace for all eternity. Naruto shook his head. I've told you that there was nothing impossible for Uchiha Naruto, Hagoromo. In about an hour these binds will not be able to hold me and I shall set forth to prepare the stage for Konoha, he spoke rather calmly. Now, I guess this is checkmate, how should I punish you?